Ruth McCrackin, notch career and business strategists are here to help you defy standards and break boundaries. Join them as they share powerful insights that have already impacted thousands of people and will have a major impact on your career, life balance, and business.
Great day, great day. Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Breaking Boundaries. Hey, Trisetta.
Hey,
Welcome here. How's everything coming along for you as we are coming together on this beautiful, amazing day as we're wrapping up October already? How are you, girl?
I know, it's crazy. How did that happen? Where did the
Listen,
time
as
go?
only time can tell you where the time go, because it's the one that decided to control it. And at this point, I don't even know if it exists, because sometimes I feel like, did you really just enter into the end of October? I digress. How's everybody doing? Let's go ahead and chime in. Let us know where you are chiming in. But most importantly, you already know the drill and the routine. It matters to us that we want to go ahead and captivate as many people as possible as we're coming into our, episode 50, when we're going to talk about breaking boundaries. And most importantly, the topic for today is we're going to touch upon decision-making confidence. Because I know you and I know, if to be true, how we're going to master this. We want to master the mastering around smart, strategic way, the right way to the path of success. And before we even get into that, definitely grab your favorite beverages, your digital device, take a notepad and a pen, or whatever ways you decide to take some notes. It is so imperative that you do not want to miss this. And definitely like and follow. If you're coming in for the first time and you're wondering, who are these remarkable beings up in my news feed, whatever platform that you all are tuning in from, definitely want you all to learn more about who we are by definitely checking out our profiles. But for the time being, I don't know about you, Tristan, but I think you are already, as well as I am, on what is the strategic risk when it comes to the path of success that a lot of us want to hone in on, and not all the ways of how social media and different ways of events and how maybe the gurus are trying to give people the tricks and shortcuts. But at the end of the day, we definitely want you all to know that there is something around mastering in a smart way in the new age of how we live today. Yes or yes?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have to make so many different decisions on a day-to-day basis, but specifically, here on the Breaking Boundaries podcast, we talk about career and business primarily, and life,
Yeah.
right? And so it's really easy to get overwhelmed with all of the options that we have available. It used to be that maybe there was only a couple options of things for us to do when it came to making major decisions, but now we have so many options available to us that we can get into, like, we can kind of get paralyzed and become anxious and just fearful of making a wrong decision. And so that's why we wanted to talk to you all today about, share with you some strategies and frameworks that you can use to make sure that when you are making decisions, you feel confident that you're making the right decision for you, and that you're doing that from a very informed and research-based place and not solely out of emotions. And we'll talk a little bit about like the emotional side or the gut side of things a little later. But for now, we really want to talk about making sure that we're making confident and informed decisions. And so we have there's a plethora, right? There's a plethora of decision-making frameworks that you can use that are out there. Today, we're just going to kind of talk about the top three, the most popular, the most common ones. And the first two are fairly simple. The third one is a little bit more complex, right? So the first one is the SWOT analysis. Have you heard that before?
Come on.
Right?
Let us know in the comments.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Listen, SWOT analysis, for those who probably thinking that, are we doing business 101? But it does work in every aspect of your life. You want to be able to identify what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what's the opportunities, and most importantly, what are the threats? And so I love the fact that we're going to kind of break this down in a framework that you're going to be able to find it to be complementary to where you are at in whatever stage you are in in your, like Tracetta said, whether in your career, in your business, and even also in your life, and what you're looking to pivot in the next chapter of your career. So what are the 3 decision-making strategies and frameworks? Tracetta just touched on the first one, SWOT analysis. I know you work with this very heavily when it comes to the strategy planning and productivity on your clients. But most importantly, give us the 3, I guess, main components when it comes to the breaking off the analysis. And I love the fact that we're going to talk about the pros and cons and what ways they can make this in a more of a matrix form. But let's talk about, what is this wide method, and what is the benefits of using this strategy in the now?
Yeah, so there's 3 different ones that I want to highlight today. One, the SWOT analysis, right? The strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats method. It's very versatile. It's used in so many different organizations. It can be used to assess internally. It can also be used to assess individually, right? But the SWOT analysis is really, in particular, it's very effective for when you're doing any type of strategic planning, or if you need to do some sort of situational analysis. All right. So that's when you want to use the SWOT analysis. Then we have the pros and cons framework, right? So you're looking at the advantages and disadvantages of different decisions, right? So that means you're sitting down. It's also called the Ben Franklin close, right? You get a piece of paper, and on one side you write all the pros or advantages, and on the other side you write all the cons or disadvantages, and it helps you to really kind of weigh the benefits and negatives of making a particular decision, so you can see where it's a little more easy to see which one outweighs the other, so that you're making a decision that's more aligned with what's going to be best for you, right? And then there's the decision matrix. It's a very effective tool for complex decisions, right? It involves a myriad of criteria, right? So what happens is it really allows you to systematically evaluate various options, right? By assigning weights to the different criteria, and then very objectively comparing each one of those things. So this method is really used primarily in like project management or product selections, any other type of scenario where there's multiple factors that come into play. So this is this is something that you're more likely to use in the workplace versus in your personal life. However, it can come into play when you've got a bunch of moving pieces. Like maybe you're deciding between 2 different job opportunities, and both of them require relocation. And so there's a myriad of a whole bunch of different factors, a whole bunch of different scenarios can come into play. So you might be able to use the decision matrix there.
I love how you broke that down. You see how just really transitioning this major business framework and how it can incorporate in your workplace, how it can incorporate in your relocation. I love how we bring it in some realistic. You just do it so well. I sometimes just be like, doggone, Tracetta. So it's just a matter of just giving some practical ways of how to really instill these benefits. And now let's talk about that. What are the benefits of using decision-making tools? How can we put this into implementation, into practice, and some of the decisions that maybe cause us to say, well, geez, I don't know, or maybe help you make some more sound and clearer decisions before having to make that major move, relocating from different area codes, or even moving from a whole complete different state or country at that. And that's something that you definitely want to use the SWOT analysis for. You definitely want to be able to do the 2-column sectioned out of the pros and cons. And then most importantly, making that decision, is this the effective way, or is it efficient for me to make the decision? If you're more of a family group, now that you have livelihoods connected with you, so you're not just making a decision on your own, you're also connecting livelihoods that are part of your transformation or transition when it comes to your career. Now let's talk about some of the ways that we want to be able to preface this on what are some of the benefits, what are some of the ways they can actually put this to work for them, and then maybe give us some examples if you have any on working this with a client or an individual, or even maybe a project that you have done that can definitely help give some people some light bulb moments, especially me, we can definitely help execute this. And we'll talk about what ways you can actually do this as an action item at the end. So yeah.
Yeah. I've actually, let's talk about some of the benefits of
Yes.
using these frameworks, and then I'll share with you an example. First of all, some decisions that we have to make can be very overwhelming for us, right? So by using one of these frameworks or one of these strategies, it gives you a structure, right? It gives you a structured and systematic approach to making the decision so that you ensure that all of the important factors are considered, and it helps to guide that process so that you're not just kind of willy-nilly making decisions out of emotion or out of pressure, right? It really gives you that framework, that structure, right? That's why it's considered a framework, right? It helps you to make informed decisions, right? Because each of these tools are going to require you to gather some data, gather information, and then analyze it so that you are making informed choices, and it's going to help to reduce that impulsivity, right? Sometimes we just kind of make, impulsive or reactionary decisions. By using one of the frameworks, you can be much more measured in making your decisions. It also helps to provide that objectivity, right? So our emotions can get the best of us sometimes, and our
let's talk about that. Yes, because we can definitely be throwing the baton down because we don't see the immediate result, or we just don't have directions or an actual roadmap to lead us, like, oh, did you do these steps? And then like, no, gosh, I didn't make informed choices, or I didn't have a structure approach. Sometimes we just kind of going with the wind, but the fact that you're adding this to help provide some kind of direction and a more of a strategic approach matters. Let us know in the comments if this is resonating with you all and how you find this to be a major game changer and you're looking to implement this sooner rather than later. So yeah.
Yeah. It can also make, decision making more efficient, right? It can save you time and resources instead of, like having to sleep on it multiple nights, really being able to go through the process of grabbing all the information that you need to make the decision and being able to do it quickly. That's really crucial when it comes to time sensitive situations. So maybe there's a deal on the table and you only have a certain window that you have to make a decision about, or, maybe it's a, what do you call it? Maybe it's a house, right? And, it's a bidding war and you need to make a decision there. It doesn't really matter.
Lord.
It's going to help you to be much more efficient in making those decisions. And it helps to kind of manage and reduce some of the potential risks that can be associated with decisions, right? By looking at all of the information, you can reduce the chance of you having some sort of negative outcome. Right. So those are the benefits. And one of the one framework that I use consistently in my personal life is the pros and cons, right? Right. And I taught this method to my daughter. And I remember she was trying to make a decision about a job offer. She had been offered 2 different jobs and both were good opportunities. And she was struggling with, she's like, Mom, I don't know which one to go with. And she was going back and forth. And I told her, I said, well, sit down, get a piece of paper, write the pros and cons of each opportunity and go with the one that has the most pros or the most advantages to you.
Absolutely.
Right.
I like that. I like that.
Ended up doing, and it made the decision a lot easier for her because it also made her think about it much more critically rather than emotionally. Right. Because we all know that job opportunities are more than just the title and the salary.
Come
You've
through.
got to consider the culture. You've got to
Yes.
consider your career track, what direction you're wanting to go in your
Right. Because you might be hitting a
your career.
plateau. Because it
Right.
might be a lean company where you went into this role thinking that there's going to be a growth spectrum for you in the line of what you have as your personal goals and growth. And then you
Exactly.
go into this making decision process and they're telling you, oh no, this role is where it's at. There's nothing else after that at this point. And so now you got to make another decision in that process. So I love the fact that you
Yes.
are sharing. Write down the pros and cons. If growth something that matters to you, or you might be content with just being in that role until you decide something shifts in the next few 4 to 5 or 10 years. Some people are okay with doing the same line of work for a long-term period of time, whereas it's according to study, every 18 months, people are looking to be recognized and getting promoted to the next level of their path, their career path, when it comes to where they're at in their career titles and different roles and responsibilities. Let us know in the comments if that is you, if you're looking for personal growth, if you're looking for ways, how do you pivot and what ways, and see, and let us know, do you find this to be benefit to doing the pros and cons? Because many of you are, especially with those who we talk to on a consulting basis where they're looking to promote themselves. Are you then putting this into play when it comes to your decision making and getting offers like Trisetta just shared? On second thought, I just don't know, just want to become this benefit manager or the next chief of staff without knowing that is there a long-term or even a short-term recognition or rewarding of pivoting myself in the next level of my career. So absolutely wonderful that you're sharing what ways they can incorporate this. Did you want to add anything else in involving what was the outcome? What was her way of, what is the benefit? Because I think you're going somewhere with that and adding the pros and cons and what can they find to be true by leveraging that framework.
Yeah, so it just made it easier for her to make a decision for the role that that matched or aligned with the direction she wanted to go with her career.
Yes.
And it ultimately ended up being the absolute best decision for her. But she may not
Yay.
have come to that conclusion had she not gone through the process of,
Mm,
like I said, removing the emotion out of it and really looking at the cold, hard facts, looking at the
mm.
data. And then sometimes, and I'll jump ahead a little bit here, sometimes the decision that we make, maybe it's equal, right? Maybe one decision on paper outweighs another decision, but there's something in your gut. There's something telling you,
Mm.
something on the inside that's just not settled. You can't get peace around taking that pathway. After you've done all the information gathering and you've done all of the analysis and you reviewed all the data and all,
Yes.
then you
I'm sure there's a lot of
ultimately,
people who will be saying, oh my gosh, you're talking to me, Trisetta, on
yes,
this. Because sometimes it could be a bittersweet. Like, oh my gosh, I'm still finding angst in finalizing which direction do I go? Because you're like stuck still in the fork of the road. How do
yes.
they then fine tune or unleash or allowing that emotion to find its way to navigate to making a firm or sound decision without being doubtful on that final decision making? That's a good one.
Yeah. So, when it comes to that, it's just the emotional part of it. You want to also trust your
Mm.
gut, right? You want to learn
Yes.
learn how to trust your instincts. So, and there's a difference between, just kind of being cocky and overconfident and
Uh,
trusting your instincts, right? Because sometimes we can kind of
I
get
need to pause
in our
there. I
head.
think you said that so casually. When it comes to the feeling of overconfident, like, oh, I know I'm qualified for this role, or I know I can definitely do this job really well. The culture is nice and everything, but I may want to go ahead and make a decision, and then it may be irrational because now your feelings are now being back in the surface, is what I'm hearing, versus hard, true facts and really
Yeah.
making a sound decision in that aspect. I like that a lot.
Yeah, because we can end up biting off more than we can really chew, right? And not just in our career. Maybe it's in, going back to buying a house. Maybe you're overconfident in your ability to invest a particular amount of money in a home, and you
Yeah.
get out there and you go to the tippy top of your budget and you get in your home and then realize, oh my gosh, something breaks and you don't have the resources to be able to, something major breaks and you don't have the
Right.
resources available to be able to repair it. And now you're stuck in this home where you've got to try and scrimp and save to be able to just fix something that's major, or and then you're being
That's tough.
inconvenienced. Maybe your hot water heater goes out and you don't even have the few $100s to replace not just the water heater itself, but then to have a plumber come in and replace it for you.
That's tough.
You
Yeah.
know,
Making some tough decisions because
right,
of knee jerk reactions or impulse decision making, where you implemented this framework of the pros and cons, that this is the one we're sitting on, because I find this to be true oftentimes when discussing these through consults with top performers and mid managers and leaders on, oh man, Ruth, I may have went over my head and taken this promotion without fully, and I love the fact that you're sharing. So let us know in the comments, are you all going to take this benefit on making a decision in a more rational way versus irrational way? Yes or yes?
right,
Yeah.
right. So looking at the data, but then also trusting self, right? Trusting yourself. I remember over the summer, this is more on a personal level. I remember I met this from a dating center. I'm single, right? And I'm dating. And I met this gentleman who was like, he presented as this amazing person, right? He's a professional, very professional, very put
Ooh,
together.
child.
Made,
Yes.
had a great role and made great money and had a very exuberant personality, and was just like, he was really, really an amazing man. And I
Wow.
remember a couple days after our first date talking to one of my best friends, and I said to her, I don't think he's the one. And she's like, well, why? And I was like, I don't know. There's just something just doesn't feel right. Something just doesn't feel right. I don't quite know what it is, but something doesn't feel right.
Interesting.
But I didn't end the relationship immediately. I didn't stop speaking with him immediately. I allowed the scenario to play out, and that just kind of kept my antennas up. And then, over the course of the next several weeks, I began to understand why I felt that in me, right? So on paper, he looked like the perfect man, right?
Wow.
But something in
Wow.
me
Yeah.
said, something's not quite right here.
Yeah.
Something is a little off, right? So you've got to be able to look at all the data, look at all the facts, look at all the things before you, but then also trust that your knower, right, on the inside of you, your
Yes.
knower on the inside of you will alert you to something is awry. And so you want to learn how to trust that as well.
Great way of adding your personal, because I'm sure there's a lot of folks who are looking to break through when it comes to the relationship matchmaking journeys. Oh, heaven on earth. So let's talk about how to overcome the fear of failure and making calculated risks. Although everything might look good in the surface, like I heard, it may look very well on paper. It may even look very well on a digital aspect, because we live in a day and time that we leverage and we rely on our digital feedback, reviews, and what is being put out there. And also, most importantly, we want to talk about what about psychology of fear and decision making. So let's break those down while we're unfolding this next segment here. Risk aversion. How many of you all know that fear is a major factor, and how do you identify it? How do you embrace it? How do you allow it to still be part of your world? Because it is part of your world. We as humans, we know to be true that fear is a energy that's going to be part of us. Now, the question you want to ask yourself is, how are you identifying it? So fear tends to make, number one, let me know in the comments, does fear tend to make people risk adverse, leading them to prefer more familiar, decisions, and maybe second, say, you know what, I'm more familiar with this space because guess what? It's more safe. It's more conservative in terms of choice, and it's not irradical, or it's not high risk. I'm not putting too much on the table, or I'm not investing too much of my finances when it comes to my education or when it comes to my career, or like you said, we're doing a huge budget expense when it comes to purchasing a home. Even if you may feel like these type of trends, that people may have this risk averse intention in mind, you may not be the most optimal when it comes to it in the long run. And let's talk about how your emotions tend to be your influence, the emotional influence. Let us know, do you want to be able to have fear to be that powerful emotion that drives you, or do you want it to where you want to be clear and not have this clouded judgment on how it's leading you to make impulse decisions? And it's driving you to the point where it almost feel like survival mode. Like, ever feel where you're like, oh my gosh, I just got this layoff, or I just been told that we only have 2 months left within this department that I've been embedded in for the last maybe 5 years, and now I'm being shifted and abruptly took the welcome mat off my underneath my feet, and now I got to make this irrational decision. There's where fear may come in and start driving you to making where now you want to go ahead and take this waitress job and not be sound minded and not having to think that you're now putting this survival mode. Don't get me wrong. I know that we have livelihoods, especially if you're maybe, a single mom, or you perhaps feel as though that I have a lot on my plate. I do need to make some survival move. But is it really have to be driven by fear though? Let's talk about perception of threat. How many of you are familiar with this particular common denominator of when we hear perception of threat? Fear often arises when people, most importantly, get to perceive a threat or danger in a decision that they're going to be perhaps making. And then they lead to avoiding or avoidance behavior or decision avoidance. So tend to like suppress it or ignore it because we know how it makes us feel. As for example, like for me, if I know back in the days where I would get pop-up calls from the collections agencies giving me a call because I know that we were living in a day and time where, yes, it was hard. It was hard. So when you see them coming in, they're obviously 9 out of 10 times going to be asking for what? Something that you do not have for them. So what do? You tend to have that behavior or that decision. Instead of strategizing, you tend to what? Ignore and avoid it. That's the case how we want. So you don't want to be able to continue resulting to making those type of decisions. What else can we incorporate as far as certain perception of threat or any emotional influence or reverse aversion that we can share in a practical way that people can sense? Oh my gosh, I think Trissette and Ruth are talking to me, and I really want to be more intentional on how I allow fear to psychologically drive me in making some of these irrational decisions.
Yeah. So, one thing about us, we're always going to give you some strategy. We're going to give you some action steps, some things that you can put into play, some advice, if you will, for you to take away. So when it comes to making decisions and kind of removing the fear, how can I want to share with you some advice for taking strategic risk. Right. We were just talking about like that risk of people feeling like being risk averse. Right. And so while you can't avoid risk altogether, you can be strategic and you can be smart about the specific risks that you are taking. So the first thing that we would encourage you to do is to do your research.
Yes.
Right.
I like that.
Take time to research and gather all the relevant information so that you can understand all the potential outcomes, all the different factors that are at play, and the consequences that may come about as it relates to your decision. You want to identify what the specific risks are that are associated with each of the different choices, and then assess that objectively, right? You want to consider both the best case scenario and the worst case scenario so that you know which one outweighs the other. Also look at, maybe you want to go talk to a mentor or some sort of expert. Maybe you want to hire an expert, or you want to talk to a colleague or a family member who has experienced a similar situation that you're dealing with, and allow their insights to provide you with some valuable perspective that can help you to make a more informed decision.
That's good. Yeah, absolutely. I like how you're saying that because oftentimes we need strategy to help us conduct in a more manageable way and have the decency to fall back and then even reflect like, geez, did I make the right decision? Did I take this risk and really assess it and invest in researching and invest in, you know, investing in myself, especially when it comes to even as a business, we tend to want to get expert help because sometimes we could peel things back and add 2 hours to researching it and add another 2 hours to reevaluate and reassess. But if we're not seeking advice to have another set of lens to come in to reassess, maybe it's a video that you made and you're looking, and then you've done all the editing that you could possibly think of when it comes to this video of presenting it back to your team. And now you have maybe one of your peers come in and say, hey, you tried these 6 steps? You're like, you know what? I didn't take that avenue. And now you're taking keen feedback. And then now you're able to go back and get some of that insight and then implement those values and then see it in a different way. But because you were able to give yourself that permission to sit back and be receptive to learning and getting clear objectives and a limit, and then removing some of the limitations. Because how many of you all can definitely say we tend to be our own self critics when it comes to just being more of a, for the better lack of term, Debbie Downer, or saying, I'm not good enough, or I don't have the right proper skills, or I'm not even going to take the risk of taking this new project on because I'm just not sure if I'm going to be putting the best foot forward. And that's why it's so important to collaborate. What else can we add? I know you talked about some different strategies and risks, and as we're wrapping up and closing up, was there anything else that we can definitely want to share that they can actually take into action?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Ruth just talked about being really clear on what your objectives are and kind of what your limitations are, because just because it's a good opportunity doesn't mean it's a good opportunity for you. I remember I was presented with someone reached out to me for an opportunity for my business, and it was an amazing opportunity. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was trying to figure out how to make it work. And then I realized, I was like, wait a minute. This doesn't align with my specific goals and objectives that I have for my business, though it's a great opportunity. Yeah. It's not really what I want. It's going to take me away from the direction I want to go. So you want to be really clear with what your goals are and your objectives are before you decide to take the risk.
I like that.
Right? Because that's going to help to kind of create those boundaries, right? Boundaries help us stay on track, right? You want to stay in your lane, right? But another thing that I would say to do is to create some sort of contingency plan, right? So once you evaluated everything, you realize kind of what the pros and cons are, what the best and worst case scenarios are, and you've made your decision, you want to come up with a plan to address any potential setbacks or failures or things that might come up along the way, right? Any type of road bumps. So by having that plan in place, then if this were to happen, then you know what you will do. And you're not having to make a decision in the heat of the moment when your emotions are high. If you make that plan, that contingency plan in advance, then I don't have to worry about it because I've already prepared for that. Now, obviously, you can't plan and prepare for everything. Things are going to come up that you had no idea were going to happen. But if you can have that plan in place for the things that you are aware that could go wrong, that's going to make it, that's going to help to remove a lot of the risk associated with the particular decision that you're going with.
I think so. I think that definitely is hitting the nail in the coffin. At this point, you want to know, am I balancing myself? Am I approaching this decision or this opportunity in a way that I'm not over adding my confidence? Like you mentioned earlier, you want to be able to put yourself in a way where you're wanting to use those alerts, those, even in psychology and in science, they talk about certain chemicals that we tend to bring out of us that is like an indicator whether it feels good or it don't feel good. But we want to make sure that, are we being aware? Are we making ourselves become trusting within our instincts and intuitions? And that's what we're going to be wrapping up with. We want to help you all to balance your confidence. That was the whole purpose of really laying down the fruit of the land when it comes to your decision and making your confidence to help you make those firm strategies and rational decisions and having the roadmap to getting you there so you can still be in that path to success. Let us know, has this been super beneficial for you all as you are walking through away from this breaking boundaries episode? You may even want to go back and also hit replay. I'm going to even want to go back because there was a lot of opportunity that we just unpacked within our short time together. As we walk away, we want to hear your insights. When we talked about the methods of making confidence and informed decisions, and we talked about the 3 decision-making strategies and frameworks. Go back and learn those. We talked, number 1 was the SWOT analysis. We also talked about overcoming fear of failure and having the self-doubt and making true calculated risk. What does that look like when it comes to risk inversion and the other ones that we touched based on as well? And then putting it into work, taking king advice, making smart, rational decisions, going to the path of success in a very clear roadmap and supportive type of way. Don't do it alone. Oftentimes we tend to want to make decisions without maybe calling up a friend or calling up a mentor and getting keen feedback. So that way it kind of soften off some of the edging that you feel, the angst that maybe come along as you're going through the final process of making that decision to buying that home or accepting that job offer. Was it the right way to go versus thinking, man, I may have to go back and step back because I might have bit more than I could chew. Let us know if this has been an opportunity to really give you an opportunity to really radiate and become more efficient in making firm decisions and raising your confidence. I love it. I love it. We will definitely meet you all in the comments. While you're still here, do not forget to share and subscribe. Follow us because we definitely want to continue to radiate what ways can we help you all impact and transform your individual walk, regardless if it's in your career, your business, and in your life. And then until next time, my friends, let us know if you have any other questions. Go ahead and put in a comment. We'll just meet you there. All right.
Bye for now.
Join and subscribe with career strategist Ruth McCrackin and business strategist Trisetta Washington to the Breaking Boundaries podcast each week. You too can experience the limitless potential of rewriting rules and creating an extraordinary future for your